thanks to TYT Investigates and its reporting on the secretive religious group that runs the National Prayer Breakfast, known as the Family, all of a sudden they're making some changes, trying to make it seem as though they have passed the torch on to a different group to run things, trying to make it seem as though there are new rules to prevent corruption taking place within these National Prayer Breakfast events. But thanks to an email that was accidentally sent to TYT by a former Republican congressman, we actually figured out that no, things aren't really changing with this new leadership. And more importantly, that email said some things about TYT specifically, which we'll get to at the very end. But first, let's give you the details on what's going on here. So in order to really understand this in context, let's just tap into some of Jonathan Larson's reporting from last week. That was when he reported that the breakfast will be split into two events. On Capitol Hill, President Joe Biden, administration officials, and members of Congress will convene with very tight +1 restrictions. Simultaneously, at the Washington Hilton, more than 1,000 family insiders and their guests will gather as they have every year except 2021 and 2022, but without the access they used to have to powerful politicians. So the idea here is to have two separate events to prevent the corruption that was very clearly taking place when politicians and all these weird religious figures were getting together in one event, okay? Now, the Fellowship Foundation, AKA the legal arm of the family, is no longer running the prayer breakfast, but it looks like they're still very much involved. So that's all good news because the National Prayer Breakfast has been used for all sorts of schemes by the family. But thanks to this big slip up by this former Republican congressman, we discovered that the family is still plotting to exert their power over DC and its politicians. So former Representative Zach Wamp, he was a Republican congressman from Tennessee, intended to send an email to former Senator Mark Pryor, a Democrat from Alabama, who runs the new organization in charge of the National Prayer Breakfast, which is now called the National Prayer Breakfast Foundation. Instead, though, Wamp made the mistake of sending the email to us.
Oops.
Which was awesome, okay? And let's take a look at what was inside that email. Family insiders, Wamp writes, accuse leaders of the new event of throwing us under the bus and are upset about public remarks made about the split by Senator Chris Coons, one of the family's few Democratic defenders. Wamp didn't specify which remarks by Coons had raised hackles, but Coons told the Associated Press, quote, some questions have been raised about our ability as members of Congress to say that we knew exactly how it was being organized, who was being invited, how it was being funded. Many of us who'd been in leadership roles really couldn't answer those questions. So that's really the only public thing Chris Coons has said about it, who, by the way, is a Democrat. And then apparently confirming that the family and the new board are in communication, Wamp added, quote, heard today the new group is just throwing us under the bus. One reason to maintain secrecy and not respond, Wamp suggested, was that the board leading the new prayer breakfast wants to preserve unity with the family. Wamp says that, quote, more stories and more slander will only lead to more division, end quote. So Cenk, before I give you more details, including what Wamp said about TYT specifically, what do you think?
Okay, so I'm really proud of our reporting here. So that's, we do obviously the news and then commentary here, analysis and perspective, et cetera. But the Investigates crew, reports crew are objective reporters, and they've been on this story. And they've revealed a great number of things. The degree to which the family used the prayer breakfast to spread anti-LGBTQ hate throughout the world, to cover up corruption in Guatemala. They're the ones that radicalized Mike Lindell, and they have access to all of these politicians, including Democratic politicians, that they use for credibility as they spread this toxin throughout America and the world. So let alone the Russian spies that were attending the events. So Jonathan Larson has done a brilliant job of documenting all of that. So when you see Senator Coons saying, they're asking these questions that we can't answer, that's us. We're asking the questions that they can't answer. You know why they can't answer them? Because the funding we found out comes from Franklin Graham. Franklin Graham is a right-wing zealot evangelical preacher, one of the most famous ones in the country, and that's when Coons and everybody else gets embarrassed. They're like, oh, good investigative reporting. They never even bothered to find out who's behind it, who was financing it. All those Democrats just going in, oh yeah, oh great, oh we're just praying together. Meanwhile, they're taking pictures, using that to spread the hateful ideology across the world, like I said, including, by the way, in Uganda, where they proposed a bill to kill gay citizens.
Yeah, to execute them, a death penalty for anyone engaging in gay behavior.
So other people have covered this great in the past, like Jeff Charlotte, but Jonathan has done the great bulk of the reporting here, and exclusive after exclusive. And so what that led to was this split. So where they were saying, no, okay, the family is going to be in one room and all of its adherents, and they used to all be in the same room, and the politicians are going to be in a different room.
Completely separate events.
Separate events, okay. Yeah. They're not separate events.
No, it's just meant to give you the illusion that they reformed this whole thing to prevent corruption. But it's very clear that the same goons that ran the National Prayer Breakfast before are still very much in communication with the new individuals who are running the prayer breakfast, right? And so this email that former Congressman Wamp accidentally sent to TYT confirmed what Jonathan Larson had speculated on and reported on before. So a source close to the family said that all the new foundation's board members, quote, have been involved in the background of the breakfast for a long time. The sources said they probably don't have issues with how the breakfast has run in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's get to the juicy stuff. Okay.
Okay, and then I've got more on the so-called split.
So Pryor, as I mentioned earlier, Pryor is now in charge of the National Prayer Breakfast Foundation. So like the new leadership, everybody calm down, it's all gonna be okay. Apparently he sat down for an interview with TYT Investigates, well over an hour, and Wamp didn't like that. And it was clear in the email he accidentally sent to TYT. Apparently he wrote to Pryor, quote, "You have zero obligation to get in the weeds with these snakes. They aren't honorable, so it's very unfair to you and us."
Yeah.
Have we been bad? Have we been bad boys and girls? Have we been very naughty? We haven't been honorable.
They have Democratic, let alone Republican congressmen go throughout the world, and now the Democrats don't necessarily know it, but they take the pictures, they use their credibility. And argue to imprison people who are LGBTQ in different countries, and like we told you in Uganda, execute them. And not only that, in Guatemala, because of the prayer breakfast and the people that Trump met at it, they ended an investigation into corruption that the United Nations said was like incredibly harmful to Guatemala, and the honest prosecutor had to flee the country for fear of being murdered. Okay, so but we're not honorable. They were just honorably spreading corruption and hatred throughout the world when us snakes revealed what they were doing. And so he's really upset about it.
Being called a snake or someone who's not honorable by a gross, corrupt former Republican politician is the greatest badge of honor and the biggest achievement I feel TYT has accomplished, right? I love that they hate us. You know why? Because Jonathan Larson's reporting revealed who these people really are and what they're really up to.
Yeah, and so guys, we'll have the links down below in the description box if you're watching this later, so you can read the stories yourself. But Jonathan, you accidentally said speculates, but he never speculates. So he has the board members and where they are and what their connections are. He did it with immaculate detail. But to me, the killer quote in the story is when Wamp, in that email he accidentally sent to us, said, "More stories and more slander will only lead to more division." But wait, I thought you guys said that you already had the division, that you were two different entities. So it turns out you aren't two different entities, and he's saying they'll split us apart. And now the part that you might not know. They have been pretending that it's the two different entities, and don't worry, the family's not gonna get involved with the prayer breakfast, etc. And they made it appear like Congress was running the new entity. And in fact, tons of mainstream media outlets have not only not credited Jonathan for the story while clearly quoting his work, But on top of that, they bought into the line, bought into it hook, line, and sinker. They're like, oh yeah, now Congress is running it. That's not true at all, Look at the actual reporting on it. So be careful of these guys. They're gonna continue to try to influence our politicians to go in this radical religious right agenda. And obviously still the Democrats don't get it, but great reporting here. And by the way, that unit, our audience paid for it 6 years ago. And so in a sense, they're calling you snakes, but I love you for it because that's real reporting with real impact. At least they're not in the same room together, and that was, I think, almost definitely because of us. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.